Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and maybe even welcoming some new peeps to the Familia. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up, because it helps out a lot. We're going to be asking the question today, what does Asmongold, Ashes of Creation, and Kingdom Builders all have in common on one side of what could be described as the dark side of PvP, on bullying, griefing, punching down compared to punching up. And for some of you who are not familiar with the mobile games, or I should say the Kingdom Builder genre within mobile games, which is usually under the strategy, these games are often referred to as 4X, city builders, build and battle, etc. Now, this data was taken from March, so earlier this year, so it's about 8 months old. However, it probably is not going to vary that much from when we have pulled this a couple times. But what this shows is that the top 200 grossing board, which is where this data was pulled from, on the United States market under the strategy genre, going through all of those 200 games, almost 50% of them are made up of kingdom builders. So this genre of strategy games is a huge portion of that market. And so, again, just to give a little bit of some foundation, here we go.
Corruption system that balances this capability of non-consensual PvP by punishing the person doing the killing, assuming the other player did not flag up / attack back or consent to this, right? I won't go too much into detail with this as I've done so in too many videos, but Intrepid Studios, developer of this MMO, has made a lot of progress in balancing this corruption system to the point it is extremely detrimental for you to go corrupted, and it is very seldom seen.
Which is essentially attacking.
Just days ago, we received a patch updating the corruption system to be even more harsh and get rid of some of those workarounds that players were using.
That's a lot.
Not only do you drop up to 3 pieces of gear, incur what seems to be increased XP debt, have reduced combat.
Now, this is interesting to me because you know the first thing that comes to mind when I think about this? It's that scene from SAO where Kirito is going and basically hunts down the PvP killers and that are bullying weaker players and or grouping and ganging up on them. And there's a scene here where you see that I think they're going to attack him, and you'll notice that they're all doing the attacking, right? And you can just imagine this is like in Kingdom Builders, probably like T4 players, right, that are going up against T5. He's the T5 in this case, and nothing's even going down because of, you know, a high level that he is. And basically he's able to essentially dispatch with the ringleader in this group, and, you know, all's fair in love and war. And I just think it's funny because that's one of the immediate moments I think of is him kind of going out and basically bullying the bullies in that case.
Why not just disable the feature to PvP unflagged players? Weird. There's a lot of people that like the idea of being able to kill other players non-consensually. My opinion on this is that any game that allows you to have non-consensual PvP will cannibalize itself, and it will never be a mainstream game. There will always be people that like those games and people that play them, but you basically make the ceiling for your game extremely low.
Okay, this is interesting. And I say this because some of you have probably heard me talk about this before. When we look at, you're getting populated into a home kingdom of a kingdom builder, right? Regardless if it's, you know, Lords Mobile, State of Survival, Rise of Kingdoms, Call of Dragons, Infinity Kingdom, etc. And you're getting populated there. And one of the things that you look at, probably one of the more popular games within the genre right now, we can just use Rise of Kingdoms as an example, is you get into the home kingdom, and one of the biggest worries that players have that have either been playing for a while or it quickly becomes apparent to them is having civil wars, having unnecessary fighting, or just a lot of PvP that's happening early on when you're trying to prepare for something like a KVK or a Kingdom vs. Kingdom or SVS, server versus server, where basically it's your kingdom and the players there, they're going to be fighting against other kingdoms, right? It's kind of the same thing as like if you're going to end up having, you know, it's like if a world war was going to happen, right? You know, and you're trying to get your country into the best potential fighting state that it can be. You would rather be a country that's not having a lot of civil war and internal turmoil or internal strife, compared to others that are not, and they're able to focus more on their battle preparation, their network, their logistics, their organization, etc., compared to having to kind of deal with something that might only be detrimental or kind of slow their preparation or battle readiness down. And this is something that, again, in Kingdom Builders, it is a worry. And so it's very, I love hearing this from other people, especially that have a little bit more of an audience, that also have a good understanding of kind of what this level of unforced, or you could say unconsensual PvP / forced PvP, can really have with its negative impacts on a game. Let's continue.
Right? A game that has non-consensual PvP, this would only logically affect people that don't want to PvP, or people that want to kill other people that don't want to PvP. And you think about, like, what kind of a person wants to go after and enable themselves to kill people that don't want to be killed? Well, somebody who wants to negatively impact the game experience of those other players in a obstructive way. Their goal is for that other player to have a bad time.
And again, I think Asmon just hits the nail on the head here. You know, when we look at, like, I can tell you a number of kingdoms I've been a part of that I've done projects for, where, you know, basically, for those that might not be privy to that, essentially what a jump project or a new start project is where you're just trying to get as many people to join. You know, you could have hundreds of people in there, a couple of alliances or guilds worth, and then you're all starting out in a brand new kingdom at the same time. And the idea being is that you're trying to establish a foothold, a large enough presence that can impact and allow for you to have a little bit more direction, control, if you will, over where the kingdom is going by being able to implement things like expectations, standards, rules, maybe even just adding structure to the kingdom. And oftentimes, if this is done right, you can do things such as reduce the amount of overall player drop-off and also deter people from going around and roguing it up or just having a lot of unnecessary PvP. Of course, in other ways, that might be more of the majority. Sadly, that sometimes is not the case, and you might just have one or two alliances that want to go in there and just kind of say, you know, do the whole mine approach. However, I just want to at least highlight both sides of it and what the potential upside can be if it is done right. But yeah, the challenge is that some people just want to go around and bully others. And there's this clip, a brief clip here from another show that I really enjoy watching called The King's Avatar. And this is where you have a bunch of people that are like looking around for these guys. They basically were trying to attack them essentially once they had logged in and were kind of harassing them over and over.
Ban some of the individuals.
Here's the thing. People that want non-consensual PvP want to harass. They want to grief. That's why they want it to be non-consensual. That's the whole point.
For the repeated.
And so it's interesting, you hear this on the fact that this is kind of more of a state of mind for some players. This psychologically, this is how some people will view it. Now, oftentimes if you're playing a kingdom builder, you may hear it referred to as a war game, a battle game, a fighting game, a PvP game. And there is just a big difference between, like we've talked about before, punching down and punching up. But the idea is that if you have people that, again, will spend, and there's pay-to-win aspects of these games too as well with their in-app purchases, and this has kind of always been the case for Kingdom Builders, at least for as long as I've been playing them, you know, since back in Game of War, back around 2013, and there's been a number of Kingdom Builders that have been released since then. There, for the most part, has been this ability to kind of spend to win, if you will, where you're able to just basically get to a higher level, having higher tier unlocks, being a stronger player, having a stronger account, and then you're able to have advantages. And those advantages can be you just having an easier time out there in war.
Attacks on Asmongold during this time.
Yeah. So I have said many times in the past that our stance on griefing will always be it's an actionable offense. And to be fair, the players that I banned yesterday are players who I gave 3 separate warnings to stop griefing this brand new logged in player. That isn't preferential treatment. I don't care if it was Asmongold or Joe Schmo off the side of the street. If it's a new player trying to learn the game, you going and harassing and killing that person for no political motivation, for no opportunity cost, for no scarcity of resources, all the reasons why PvP should exist, you are doing it for opposite of that. You are doing it to harass a person off of the server. By all means, go find a different community. That is not our intent, and you are exploiting our systems.
Good. Hell yeah. No, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, it's going to be very hard for something like this to actually happen. I'll be very surprised if this actually works. Because every game that has non-consensual PvP, the entire reason why people want it is to do that exact thing. Like, my personal opinion is that I can't really see a reason why you would have non-consensual PvP besides griefing.
So, and this is funny to hear. First off, I love the fact that the dev for the game feels so strongly about wanting to be able to offer an experience, but also at the same time trying to do the best job that they can to put safeguards or measurements in place to allow for some level of checks and balances where people can try to get the best of both worlds. However, in Kingdom Builders, that sadly is not the case. If you're a brand new player, or you're someone who wants to just spend money day one, and we've seen this happen, where you have a bunch of people, right? There's usually 5 tiers in Kingdom Builders on average. Some of them might have more, but we'll just use a 5-tier system. You have players that can spend and hit T5 within, I've seen some people do it day one. I've seen people do it in the first week or two, very much within the first season of your home kingdom, the place that you start out in. And then I've seen players that will just go around and attack and kind of rogue it up or instigate people to attack and fight. And this can very much cause a negative aspect and experience for not only new players that have no idea what they're doing in the game, they haven't played long enough to understand how the seasons work and or what the difference between something like a home kingdom and a KVK is. I can't tell you how many times I've got into calls with whales or just high spenders to take time to explain to them the difference between these two states and how them going around and just harassing, bullying, attacking players or their marches that are out in the open field, even if they're not attacking them, is detrimental not only to that individual's experience, but you have to also understand that this is a word of mouth thing. So if you have someone that has a bad experience on that home server, do you think they're just going to keep it to themselves? Maybe, but there also is a chance that they're going to go and tell other people. They'll spread that out on World Chat. They'll tell other alliance leaders, maybe officers, maybe other players. It gets wind of it. And then you kind of have this snowball effect where that experience and situation can carry over to others. And then it can be a case of where maybe people just don't want to play on that kingdom. Maybe it could be something where everyone rallies against that player. And then they sometimes maybe even just get what they want. And so it kind of almost becomes this kind of lose-lose situation instead of a win-win situation. And it can cause people to quit. It can cause people to lower their activity. It can cause people just to stop playing on that kingdom and go to another kingdom. And now that kingdom is losing players at a higher drop-off rate than maybe another kingdom is, who's more friendly to everyone who's there. But at the end of the day, it's not a good look, sadly. And it just creates a bigger water-dripping hole than it needs to be.
The fact is that if it can happen to me, it will happen to other players too, because being able to do it is funny. It's literally that simple. It's funny to be able to kill somebody over and over, and so they can't play the game. Yeah, so like it might happen to me first, but it's going to also happen to other new players. Like I'm basically I'm the test, right? I am the.
And so this is one of those things where, again, this isn't like the same person doing it, but in the Kingdom Builder experience, you can have kingdoms where players will opt to power up just so they can go around and bully people. And this can happen in a number of kingdoms. So even if it isn't just one person going and doing it, jumping from one kingdom to another, and or going after the same exact people, even if they restart and following them, which maybe could happen, but in a very small niche area. This can happen in the sense of you can have one kingdom where someone powers up, bullies people, and then another kingdom, and the very next kingdom, the same exact thing could happen, but it would just be a different set of players. And so this again doesn't really create a fantastic experience, especially if you're trying to allow people to progress in that kingdom to make it from zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3, which basically, again, for those who aren't familiar, most of these maps are usually circles, and so you just have the outer zone, which is zone 1, the middle zone, which is zone 2, and the final zone, which is zone 3. And this is just kind of an average standard approach, where if everyone starts off in the outer zones and you work your way in, how do you think players will feel if they only ever get to experience the outer zone in zone 1 and don't get to play the game just almost kind of on a campaign progression state to get to zone 2 and zone 3 because they're denied that based on other players or alliances that are going around and attacking or bullying or just not allowing for them to go? It is just one of those things where you could argue it's incredibly volatile to the new player experience, as it very much can be.
That on just a fundamental level, is this a good thing that you want to have for your game? Where like you have an entire contingency of your player base that their main goal is to stop people from playing it? No, I don't really think so. So, and how do I know this? I used to do it. That's how I know. And this is interesting because you will have groups. I've had situations where I've done a new start or a jump project, and I've had a group of players, one alliance is usually about one alliance worth, and they'll come into the kingdom with the sole purpose and objective of just wanting to go against our group. And oftentimes when you're recruiting one alliance worth or a smaller group of players, you can usually be a little bit more selective. And oftentimes the people that are in these groups can usually be a little bit more spender oriented because you're not trying to build a group of your own. You're basically just trying to build a big mercenary group. And in those cases, you can get people that are willing to go and just spend just to have some fun, do some PvP, regardless if they plan to stay in that kingdom or not. I've had situations both ways where a group has come in, about one alliance worth and sometimes half an alliance worth, and all they want to do is just do as much PvP as possible, but they have no plans on staying. It's just kind of extra money that they're willing to throw at the game. And then other cases where they do want to go and try to ruin the project, but they are willing to stay, obviously if it ends up working out for them. And so this is challenging because oftentimes when I go in with a project, it's usually 300, 400, 500 players worth that we're recruiting over a couple weeks or a month or 2 month period. And these people, usually more than 50% of them are new players who just want to try and have a great initial playing experience when they are getting into the game for the first time. And usually being a part of a group oftentimes has a little bit higher percentage of a chance at providing a little bit more safeguards and deterring other players from going up against that group where they would be willing to power up because you just have a lot more resources and a lot more players at your disposal. And maybe I shouldn't say at your disposal, but just, again, a part of your team that are able to go and address any shenanigans, if you will, that may pop up. And so what happens when you have a group, a merc group that comes in, or a rogue group that comes in, or a player that's willing just to go right up to T5 and just go around and harass everyone early on? It sadly, it happens more often than you may think. And it just sucks that that kingdom builders in general aren't really doing anything about it and really haven't, at least for a lot of the mainstream games and ones that I've played and been a part of. And it sucks because I think to myself, well, how many more players could have actually been playing this game? How many more potential spenders could have been spending money on the game because they didn't have a poor playing experience? Knew the discord and trouble it was going to create. Just not a fan of the forced PvP. I don't think that many people are fans of forced PvP. And the only people that really are usually people that want to take advantage of it and use it to harass people.
Which, again, I mean, if you think about it, that's what you have, right? You start off in a home kingdom, and there's really nothing that protects you. I mean, I think you might have your shield for the first couple days. But aside from that, for the majority of your home kingdom or starting server experience, people can go and attack anyone and everyone they want. Obviously, once passes start to open and you advance in zones, eventually the entire kingdom will become, and every zone will become accessible. And so it's not necessarily something that you can escape or you can not have. If somebody wants to go around and attack your marches and attack your city, they can. Again, whether that's early on if you get people that are in your zone, or later on when people have access to fluidly move between zones. And I can tell you, as someone who's played free-to-play in Rise of Kingdoms for about 2 years before I had spent, I think, $20 on the game for, I think it was the Growth Fund pack or something. For me, anytime that I got hit early on, especially if I was like doing a jumper or in those projects, it always felt, I guess it sucked. Like, it always felt negative. It didn't feel like, oh wow, this is cool that I got hit out of nowhere. No, because the idea being is I'm trying to develop and progress my account so I can have it ready for something like a KVK and an SVS, right? I don't really want to have unnecessary PvP that's happening, because every time I get hit, every time resources are stolen, every single time troops are damaged, that now just creates time that I have to go backwards on to then recover and recruit before I can get to the flagpole or to whatever the peak was before, right, to the front of the line in my progression, and then continue pushing that threshold up. So it really just felt like a waste of time. And I can only imagine how other people may feel about that if you're starting up a brand new account and you're getting hit, or you're getting harassed, or your troops are getting attacked, you're getting resources stolen. Like, it's almost this idea of trying to 100% or min-max a game, and you have something like let me give an example. Like that, this is like me wanting to go and play Grand Theft Auto, and I want to do 100% main missions. I want to get to 100% main, 100% side missions, but for some reason, my internet keeps cutting out, or the game keeps lagging, right? Or it's a bad disc. These are things that can create circumstances. And again, I'm talking about like not necessarily PvP related, but just to try to hammer the point home in a different eye, is these are things that can cause players to stop playing, to cause players that maybe they won't pick the game back up for a while, maybe lower their activity because of having poor player experience when they're getting into it.
PvP is non-consensual. You will eventually have people quit the game because of that. Because there's a lot of casual players that want to make progress over time. And when you only have, like, let's say an hour to play the game, if 20 minutes of that time is spent getting ganked, a third of the time that you were going to play the game has been taken away from you. And so this actually affects casual players much worse than it affects other random players. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that a lot of people might not really seem to realize, but it is massively problematic. People...
I mean, I think that was eloquently put, where it is just a case of the average player doesn't want to essentially just take losses early on. They don't want to have their progression slowed down. And this is similar to an example I've given before, right? Which is, I've had people that have played WoW and friends of mine that have said, boss, why don't you get into WoW? And I say, okay, well, what ideally do I need to do if I'm starting out? Well, they say, okay, well, you just need to focus on getting to max level. Like, that's the number one thing. Is just play through the story, grind, get to max level as fast as you can, and then the game opens up a lot more. And this is something I've always consistently heard from friends of mine that have played WoW. And it makes me think, well, why are they saying that? Well, it could be that getting to max level, in one perspective, is a way of getting closer to endgame. And it doesn't mean that you're fully maxed out. That isn't to say that. It's to say that you're getting to a point in the game that then allows for you to focus on other things and enjoy the game a little bit more in its totality. And this is something that I often compare to in Kingdom Builders, where this idea of getting to max level, for example, getting to CH25, which, having your city 25 levels is pretty standard. Having max tech, which also means that you're getting to tier 5 or the max tier. These are things that allow for you to, instead of using or spending the incoming resources that you're getting from gathering or potentially fighting and looting other cities or through PvE events, now instead of using those resources to invest into building upgrading a building to another level, upgrading a tech to another level, having to spend it on healing, having to spend it on training troops, etc. Now you get to take those two areas, and now you've reduced 3 to 4 outgoing streams of resources, and now you get to funnel those into purely PvP, which is you get to use all your resources now on healing troops to battle and training troops to battle. And so when you've eliminated additional and or unnecessary streams of outgoing resources, to then put them into ones that are going to help you out in the end game, because let's face it, if you're playing Kingdom Builders, that's really where you're trying to get to. It's how can I get my character to max City Hall level, max tech level as fast as I can, unlocking T5 troops, so that way I can then start spending all my resources purely on PvP related functions, i.e. training troops, healing troops. This is where you will get more to the end game. And that concept and idea is something that I feel is gaining a little bit more traction, but that's the idea about it, is that if you look at how long it takes a free-to-play to get to max City Hall level and max tech level, on average, we're looking at probably around like 2 to 3 years for someone who is not in a consistent high-spending alliance, maybe mid-high to mid-high spending alliance. And so it just takes way too long. And anyways.
So ganking low levels is just a childish thing to do and allow. You can say whatever you want about doing it, and you can say like whether it's bad or not, but I'll link you guys to guys' video.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is one of those things where it just kind of hammers down on the whole bullying aspect of you attacking people that are weaker than you and not necessarily people that are around the same level of you as you, to try and gauge more true skill or more tactical and strategic awareness on kind of who is maybe the overall better player and or better group in those cases, where it's really more of a skill deterrent and not just a power difference.
And pressure. And the PvPers will play because they want to grief casuals, not actually fight good players, so they'll...
Yeah, there we go. So the idea being that they just want to fight, some people, even in Kingdom Builders, just want to be able to take advantage and fight against people that are weaker than them, because they either just get a kick out of it, they just enjoy having an easier time, and you'll even have people that will spend money just so they can basically get to endgame that much faster and just be that much stronger than everyone else. And even though it most of the time isn't due to having, to being more skillful or having better strategy or better tactics, it usually just comes down to, well, I used my credit card and, I'm now stronger than you at this point. And so, we've even heard of situations where people just kind of have brain dead gameplay, but there's just nothing that someone who's weaker than them can really do about it, because they're just not close enough in the power gap where their maybe better tactics and better strategy can really make up for the difference that someone who's spending and has already powered up to endgame has been able to make to this. So this was something that Guns has stated in his video, I believe yesterday, on Will He Leave the War? And he said something in here that I just want to focus a little bit more on that ties into what we just heard.
A lot of people say that they weren't finding the game as fun anymore. And I think a reason for that is because a lot of the people here were Season 1 or Season 2 T5 players, meaning they were fighting against a lot of T4 players, right? They're fighting against a lot of T4 players, having a bunch of fun, just owning people. But you face it on lines like Echo, who's all T5. I'm pretty sure they're all T5. They might have 1 or 2 that are T4, but it's not as fun. Like, I still have fun, but it's not as fun as you send in those 3, 4 T5 marches and you take out like 40 T3, T4 marches Season 1. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is not the same. That's not the same amount of fun, but that's why it's very important, I think.
So, I mean, what he's saying here just hits the hammer on the head so well. The fact is that you have players, some, that fit that psychological mold on their approach to the game of just basically wanting to punch down, right? They don't really care too much for punching up, and or maybe some people do. But you will have players that get potentially their enjoyment out of beating up on the weaker kids. And it sucks to hear that. It sucks to even have to say something like that out loud. And as Guns articulated, it wasn't him that felt that way. It was that other people that he knew, right? Some people into war and or whomever else he might have been referring to that fit into that category as well. And so it just sucks to hear, because it is such a depressing and almost demotivating approach when you think about, well, the moment that these players start having to fight on equal footing with others, now all of a sudden the game gets boring. Now all of a sudden the game isn't fun. Now all of a sudden they're considering quitting or have quit. I don't know. It just sounds like such an immature and just very sad way of thinking. which is why not, compared to the other, which is why not take the challenge? Why not enjoy? Now you have more people at your level. This is the time where now you can really start experimenting with tactics, with strategies, and it's not just all about who has more power and who is more stronger, who has more T5 troops than others, and who can stay out longer. Right? Or better yet, who has a higher credit card limit before the bank calls and shuts it down. And then the last thing I want to show off is just some screenshots that I took from the official CoD Discord. And this isn't to say all of these, but just a couple I thought were interesting. So someone had said, we can only play if we are part of their groups and won't let others play without giving us hell on 432 and bullying new players. Kind of referring to, hey, if you don't join us, like if you ain't with us, you ain't us, kind of an approach. Someone said, can we finally get a server on one of your games that isn't completely dominated by Indonesians that just bully the new players into having forces or resources to play the game? I've had this issue with several alliances on multiple servers in Rock and finding the same issue with COD. Right? Basically, where people are going around is to hunt active players in order to get their resources, therefore depleting them and not really allowing for them to get the best gaming experience initially. Someone else here had said, oh yeah, let me go here. So someone said, what's the fastest way to gain resources? Paracuda says, bullying weaker players. Someone, heart emoji, Burn City to join, mommy chill. And again, it just kind of goes to the point of, and really what I wanted to hammer across in this video, is that kingdom builders can be so much more than what they are. And if we really want to do something that is going to potentially plug that hole of having a higher level of player drop off and reducing that as much as possible, players just really have to get on board with this idea of that home kingdom is just not where you decide we're going to go all out and fight. Now, again, if you're having someone who's coming in as a rogue player or someone who is just wanting to PvP and there's nothing that you can really do about it, maybe the game considers potentially putting in place something that maybe safeguards home kingdoms a little bit more. Those players out there, if you've played a kingdom builder, what has been your experience, and or have you had any bad experiences when playing a new kingdom builder, whether you've played kingdom builders before or not, and or did that experience or that negative or poor experience happen in your home kingdom? Did it maybe happen in the second season if you played a kingdom builder that had seasons? But if it did happen in the home kingdom, what happened? And then did that experience make you feel like, you know what, this isn't the game for me, or I'm going to stop playing, or I'm going to leave this kingdom or server and go and try another server in hopes that that experience doesn't happen to me again? Because I would really love to hear if we end up getting a variety of stories and situations that have happened to players that have just caused them to stop playing. And then my second question is, do you think there should be any kind of corruption or PvP killing system in something like a kingdom builder during your time in a home kingdom and a home server? And what would that look like? And or a way just to maybe punish rogue players? Let me know in the comments below. That's going to be it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.